Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Tales of Mystery and Adventure. I'd like to read you a story that I wrote for a Chicken Soup for the Soul book titled Random Acts of Kindness. The story is called Flower Children. The official Summer of Love happened in 1968, 1 year after the Woodstock Music Festival. But mine happened 3 years later, when I was 8 years old. Our house was on the corner of 26th and Pearl Street in Santa Monica, California, 26 blocks from the Pacific Ocean, the pier, the Midway games and rides, and one of the prettiest beaches in the state. My parents took my brother and me to the beach almost every weekend, but on long summer afternoons, I toyed with the idea of making the journey alone. Don't get me wrong, I loved my street, but something inside me, inside all boys, pulled me toward the horizon and new adventures. The problem was, to my 8-year-old mind, there was no difference between 26 blocks and 26 miles. The furthest I'd ever walked alone at that point was the 3 blocks to my elementary school. One day I sat on the sidewalk and stared down it as far as I could. The blue water of the Pacific Ocean sparkled in the distance like a magical mirage. 26 measly blocks, I thought, trying to build my confidence. No problem. I stood up and started walking. Adults had proven themselves to be mostly kind and trustworthy, but there was always that odd character, like the old man who sprang out at my friend Dana and me one day as we took our usual route home from school through the alleys. Always on the lookout for new additions to our treehouse, we had stopped to look through his trash can. "What are you boys doing back here?" he yelled. We froze in horror. Nothing?" I said, holding his trash can lid. "Nothing, huh?" he bellowed, squinting at us with his one good eye. "You're sniffing glue. That's what you're doing." Dana and I looked at each other, wondering what he was talking about. Neither of us had ever heard of anyone intentionally sniffing glue, though we had, on occasion, rubbed Elmer's glue all over our hands, let it dry, peeled it off partially, and then chased the girls around, pretending our skin was coming off. But all boys had done that. While we pondered his remark, the old man snatched the metal trash can lid out of my hand and let out a roar that would make Bigfoot envious. We ran for the hills. "And stay away from that glue!" he screamed. "It'll rot your brains out!" "He sure hates glue," Dana said as he ran next to me. As I walked to the beach alone, with that memory still in my mind, I worried about how many other people like that old man there were in the world. I shook it off and forged ahead. I had passed the elementary school and was in uncharted territory when I heard strange music coming from a house up ahead. Unlike the neighbors' well-manicured lawns, the garden at this house was bursting with the wildest assortment of flowers I had ever seen, spilling over and between the picket fence. The dozen or so adults in the yard looked like the kind of people my father called damn hippies. Giant sunflowers towered overhead, and purple cosmos exploded like mini supernovas. California poppies, kangaroo paws, black-eyed Susans, and dozens of other flowers blended into one giant bouquet. The fence pickets had been painted with rainbows, flowers, cartoon insects, and words like peace and love. The music was very loud but soothing. I now know that it was a sitar, but then I just thought it sounded magical, like a ride at Disneyland. One of the hippies was reading on the porch. Another was in the garden blowing bubbles that caught the breeze and danced around the flowers before floating away. Someone else was sharing a funny-looking cigarette with a girl who had flowers in her hair, and a man with no shirt sat in the shade playing a guitar. 3 younger girls in colorful sundresses whispered and laughed together. I was so transfixed by this spectacle that I forgot they could see me too, until one of the girls exclaimed, "Aw, look at the cute little boy." I looked behind me, but nobody was there. "Yes, you," she said. "Come here." My parents had always told me not to talk to strangers, so I hesitated. "Aw, he's shy," she said. "That's okay, we'll come out there." And they came flooding through the gate. "He's adorable," one of them cooed, kneeling and wrapping her arms around me. The other 2 also knelt, hugging and kissing me. I stood in the middle, rigid as a plank, swallowed up in a sea of bosoms, silky hair, and heady perfume. I was used to the occasional hug and kiss from my mother's friends, but nothing like this. This was complete and total love bombardment, and I liked it. One of the girls ran into the house and brought out a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with a frosty bottle of Coke for me, and we sat on the grass. The guitar player showed me how to strum the strings while he held the chords, and we sang Puff the Magic Dragon, which I knew because my mother often sang it to me while tucking me into bed at night. The girls asked me all kinds of questions and gave me advice about a bully who wouldn't leave me alone. Just keep being extra nice to him, one suggested. Eventually, he'll feel like a jerk for being so mean to you. That advice differed greatly from my older brother's. He said I should kick him in the testicles. He used a different term. I was having so much fun with my new friends, I forgot all about the beach. The late afternoon sunshine was slanting through the flowers, and the shadows were getting longer, so I told them I had to get back home. They offered me a ride, but I said I could make it myself, independent man that I had become. The three girls walked me to the sidewalk and swallowed me in their arms again, then waved goodbye as I staggered away, my young heart suffused with the peace and love they had sworn their lives to. I visited their garden often in the months that followed, until one day at the end of summer, when I went to the house and found it empty. The garden was dry, and the house, once so full of music and life, was dark. An elderly man who lived next door was raking leaves. He yelled to me, "Is your name Mark?" I answered yes. He said, "They told me to tell you something." He paused for a second, then said, "What was it? Oh, yeah. They said they had to move out suddenly, and they were hoping to see you so they could say goodbye, and they love you." I thanked him and walked home. I cried all the way. Over the years, though, the memory of the happy hours spent in that garden, feeling safe and loved, has banished whatever sadness I felt that day. Mother Teresa said very few of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. Whether or not the hippie movement was a success, or their ideas and protests stopped the Vietnam War, the flower children in that garden were the real article. They lived up to their philosophy. For a few happy afternoons in one blessed summer, they made a timid little boy feel like a prince, like he mattered, like the world wasn't such a scary place after all. What greater thing can any of us do?